morning, MenzLeague. My name is Gord, and I'd like to thank you for joining me here today. I'm a 42-year-old father of two, happily married husband, and in my leftover time, a project manager / operations superintendent in the energy industry in Alberta, Canada. It wouldn't have been very long ago that I would have introduced myself in a very different manner, emphasizing very different points. As late as 3 years ago, I would have led with the job title and my employer before you ever learned any of the other things about me. It was important to me that you knew what I did and for whom, before you knew that I had two healthy, well-adjusted children and a beautiful wife who looked forward to seeing me come home at night. Priorities, right? Then a coworker, who is always more protective of his personal time than me, introduced me to the concept of stoicism and resiliency, and how having a strong sense of self and purpose can help when some of the noise of life becomes deafening. He offered readings and podcasts that introduced me to ideas that ran contrary to what I had come to believe measured the success and progress in my life. As I worked through some of the reading, most notably The Obstacle is the Way and Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, I found that when I looked at the career I had built, it was built less on the collaboration and accountability than results at all cost and setting myself up for the next success. When it became apparent that there was conflict within my career or my personal life, I was learning ways to internalize the struggle and not share the stress in a constructive manner. I know there are lots of people who are able to do this and still find opportunities to decompress in ways that don't negatively impact their life, but that wasn't me. As I read more and more about high-performing anxiety and the characteristics of someone who is carrying that weight, the further apart the lines between resiliency and asking for support grew. To say it another way, I started to believe that asking for help and developing the skills to deal with my feelings were mutually exclusive. As you can imagine, I started to resent the things that I believed to be the source of the anxiety, and while it wasn't necessarily difficult to maintain my relationships and my job performance, it was far less satisfying. I set out to be honest with myself and what I was truly proud of and what my brain was trained to think was important, and I found out they weren't aligned. I went to work to internally redefine what success was and found that I had less anxiety and far more satisfaction with all the things in my life. The test for all of this came when I was confronted with a job loss that, while not wholly surprising, was still shocking, if that makes any sense. My newly founded sense of resiliency and stoicism had me believing that I needed to deal with all of these new feelings solo. After all, I'd been making large strides with my mental health by breaking issues into much smaller parts and dealing with them individually. But that was when the problems were of much smaller scale, and they didn't include my whole family. I came to the conclusion that I need to include my wife in some of the reconciliation I was processing internally, as there were some feelings of relief and joy that were dominating my emotional profile at a time when I certainly wasn't expecting them to. We needed to confront them together so that our team understood what the captain was going through. And at that moment, it dawned on me that the blind stoicism was going to be far more toxic to me than using the resources around me to break my anxieties down and deal with them in a measured manner. I needed to dial back that desire to be resilient, to be viewed as a rock, and ask for help. I started to talk to my wife every day about how I felt, how I slept, how the transactions of the day were going, and how they affected my mental state. I found that saying things out loud took the edges off the highs and the lows. I didn't let the highs run away in my head, but the lows never got to the depth that my imagination had previously allowed. I spoke with a psychologist, allowing her to ask questions that I didn't immediately judge and just answered honestly. The final step I took into taking control of my mental health was participating in an honest review of what I enjoyed in my career after I'd redefined what I'd viewed as success and sought out continuing education opportunities in that vein. After many years of judging success based solely on narrowly defined criteria, often set out by someone other than me, with very different outcomes in mind, I discovered that the parts of those successes that I remembered most fondly were the times when I was able to interact and connect with the folks that were instrumental in the success that I was enjoying. In short, it was the personal connections that drove me rather than the milestones. And as I became more focused on being stoic than about the issues around me, I was able to understand that better. And looking inward in those times of crisis, it showed me that I was never going to be successful unless the people around me were successful. To sum all this up, I think I'm actually fairly normal in that I used to measure success by an external yardstick that didn't always align with my moral compass. But that was all we knew. Through self-reflection, I'm able to look inward to recalibrate the methods and the wholesale changes that have come into my life. My commitment to being resilient and stoic was just too much to bear. Having the support system and the wherewithal to use it was really the crux to being a happy story versus a sad one. I think sometimes men find success with a very stoic internalized attitude, and they can't determine when to change course, even when it becomes obvious that the desired outcome isn't at the end of that road. My experience has been that having someone in your life you can communicate freely with and contribute to these realizations much sooner will allow you to avoid a lot of frustration and disappointment. If you don't have that person in your life right now, it's not too late to initiate that search for someone. Maybe they're in there already. Maybe they're watching this video right now. Maybe they're involved with MenzLeague. I want to thank Fabian and Derek for the opportunity to talk about my experience with needing to be in control and feel in control of everything all the time, and how to let those feelings go. If anyone has a comment, please reach out. Finally, I'd like to thank my friend Kurt Coburn for showing me what MenzLeague is and how I can participate. These conversations are important, and we've waited far too long to start them. Let's make sure we don't let them stop. Thank you very much.